here today, mostly just our panelists and Tamia, but that's okay because it's our first one back after first one of the semester. So excited that you guys are here. We've been wanting to do something like this for a long time. So today's topic is going to be Black and immigrant in the United States. And this kind of stemmed from a conversation that I think Tamia had with Diogo, and she felt inspired by it and told me that she thought it would be a good idea to go further into it, and I completely agreed. So yeah. And just like to tell you guys a little bit about how Tough Topic Tuesday goes, usually it'll just be like me, I'm moderating, and then we have our panelist, and we just kind of go from there and just ask some questions, get some insight, learn some things. And then we usually like post about it a little bit on our Instagram and like talk about it with others. And yeah. Hello. Oh my gosh. Okay. Do you want to sit? Where do you want? Or should I just my computer? Up to you.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to start with the first question, if that's cool with both of you. Actually, can you guys both introduce yourselves first? Do you want to start? Okay.
My name's Orlanio. I use she, her. I'm a junior VMA. And yeah.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Diogo. I'm a sophomore journalism major, and I'm really glad to be here and just having this conversation.
Yay, thank you for introducing yourselves. I think you both know me, but I'm Clarissa and I work for the Cultural Center, and I've been moderating Tough Topic Tuesdays for about since the beginning of this year. Yeah. So the first question that we're going to go into is, can you please tell us anything you would like to family is from and their path to the United States?
Yeah, I can start. So I'm Ghanaian. Both of my parents are Ghanaian and were born and raised there. They come from two different tribes. They both moved to the USA individually. They didn't like get married and come here, but so my mom is Ashanti, Akan Ashanti, and then my dad is Ewe. And they both came to different states or whatever. And yeah, they came here around the 80s, and I was born here. I have an older sister and an older brother, and we're first generation Americans. And yeah.
Thank you so much. Diogo, what about you?
My parents, they are originally from Cape Verde. They were both born there, but actually they immigrated to Portugal, or migrated is the correct word, I believe. And they were there since like the 80s or 90s. Then they had me in like '01, and I was born in Portugal. Then me and my mother decided to bring us to America, to the States. And like I don't remember what year, but I just remember George Bush was president. That's how I remember it. I think I was 5, but that's like my timeline and how I'm here today.
Okay, thank you so much. Also, random question, have either of you been able to like visit back where you are from again?
No, I have
You
not.
haven't been?
Mm-mm.
What about you?
I've been to Cape Verde twice.
Okay. Oh wow, that's super cool. Thank you for sharing that. And then just on that note, what are some of your favorite things about your culture? So, for example, some foods or traditions, values.
I think for me, it's mostly the food. I'm very much, well, when it comes to Ghanaian food, it's a lot of like starches such as like rice, different like just starchy foods such as like yam, kenke. It's just like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, it's hard for me to explain the foods, but there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of different meats as well that we have. And since it's on like the coast, like the bottom fourth is on the coast in a way. It's like West Africa, and then the bottom is like borders Atlantic. There's a lot of like fish and seafood and other foods like that. And it's also very spicy food. So like growing up, I've had a lot of food like that. One of the most like known foods from Ghana is like jollof, which is basically rice with like that's like infused with like tomato paste, and you can have like meat or vegetables or other things in the rice. So that's a really staple one. And we also have so many different types of soups, such as light soup, which is what it's a light soup. And then we put like meats and everything. We eat it with rice. And we have a spicy paste, like we call it pepe, which is kind of just like pepper, like spicy pepper. And it's called shito. And it's basically like not fried, dried fish, shrimp, other like seafood like that. And it's like dried and like crushed up, and it has like different spices in it. So that's like a type of spicy food that we have. The taste, I would probably say, is like an acquired one, just like if you haven't grown up with it, just because it's very strong, like in the spice and like the flavor. But it's definitely something that like I'm glad that I was able to grow up with and eat, because it like definitely shaped how I view food and like just in general my experiences as a kid.
That's so cool. Do you know how to make any of it?
I do.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I know how to make jollof, and then we have like spinach stew, which is like it's like spinach, and then you put like tomato paste and like other things in it, and then you have it with rice as a stew, and you have meat in it. So I know how to make that. And I know how to make like a couple other things, but like the good thing about like a lot of those types of food, it's like it's the same base. We put like a lot of tomato and stuff, so it's like the same base, but then you just cook it in different ways and it becomes different foods.
That's very cool. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. What about you, Diogo?
I would have to agree. The food is one of the best parts. Um, you know, it's just it's so rich taste that people of in Africa make. I can't even like say. I would have. It's so ridiculous how African cuisine is disrespected in the world, because I think it's by far one of the richest food. And I would also say the language is one of my favorite parts of being of my culture. And you know how the Europeans who came to Africa and had no discretion for like different tribes and different people and different languages. They all came in Cape Verde. There's just an isle of different islands. They speak a different type of Creole, and it's extremely insane. Like one of the food I love to eat is cachupa, and that's what people from my island say, Praia of Santiago. They say cachupa, and other islands they say mud chupa with M instead. It's really interesting, and they can't really decide on a dictionary, so it's all over the place.
Wow, that's really interesting. I like that. Just like difference in language and like dialect that comes like just with like colonization, even like what is brought and what is left. That's a really interesting observation. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing.
That actually reminds me of
Mhm.
something, if I could say.
Of course.
Because like I guess it's like, yeah, it's more dialogue than language, but so like I I have like we have a food called like okra soup, and like okra is like okra,
Mhm.
but we just say as okra. I think like different, I don't know if all Ghanaians call it okra, but at least in my family and extended family, we call it okra. So like I remember like being like just like just like being around people and people talking about something called okra, and I had no idea what they were talking about. So I was just like, what is an okra? And they were like, it's a vegetable. And I was like, I've never heard of okra ever in my life. And I remember being like middle school and someone was talking about okra again. I was just like, what is this okra thing? And I looked it up and I was just like, that's okra. And I realized that people actually call it okra here and not okra. And that just changed my life. I learned that way too late. But it's like little things like that that's like different there. And like, even if it's not just the language, just like the way that words are said. Like, for example, Ghana was colonized by the British. So then there's like people speak English there,
Mhm.
like okra, things like that. Like there's so many different like ways of saying things. So
Right.
then like, even if like, because I don't know the language, what I grew up with is like different ways of saying different words. So
Right.
it's kind of interesting how that like leads into life.
Yeah. No, that's definitely interesting. And just like, or just like the idea of like there's so many different ways that like one word is like to be said. And it just like has to do with the amount of like different people that like sort of like ended up on like in these spaces. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Um, so our next question is going to be, what are some misconceptions people have about you because of your background? You can think about that for a second.
I mean, I guess for me, I can't really think of anything because of my background in particular, because people never really ask my background, which is kind of because of like, well, like because of my, okay, let me start that again. So it's like not really because of background specifically, but more my name,
Mhm,
because my name is very clearly not American.
mhm.
And I feel like a lot of people, it's funny because I was actually thinking about this yesterday and like all my experiences I had with my name.
Yeah.
Because like my first, middle, and last name, there's like no English names in it at all. It's very, very like tribal.
Mhm.
Like my first name is from my dad's tribe. My second name is from my great grandma on my mom's side. So that's Ashanti and things like that. So I feel like people like kind of get like shy away from it, like shy away from asking. I usually like when people ask where my name comes from, it seems to be like they don't want to offend me when I ask,
Yeah.
as if like, it's an offensive thing to ask in the first place, which I don't think so. I mean, it's like clearly it's not American. You can ask what it is, like
Yeah.
if you're curious. And just kind of like because it it's a hard thing to like talk about because or kind of like conceptualize, because since my name is like different but not different in a way that's American, it's when people meet me and things like that, it's hard for them to kind of like see me as someone to actually speak to as a normal person,
Mm,
because of the way that it's hard to say my name,
right.
or that they don't want to try, or they don't want to get it wrong. Like I've had so many people who kind of gave up trying to say my name the first time they met me and have called me hey you
Oh my
from
gosh.
the beginning to like, and just continue just call me hey you, when like I'm a person and like I have a name.
Mhm.
And like just saying hey you is like a very dismissive way to like talk to somebody.
Right.
So I guess the misconception comes with like the misconception that like I have a name and I am a person too, in
Mhm.
a way. Even though they're not saying you're not a person, they're treating me as they like
Like an other.
as an other, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. Diogo, do you have what do you want to add to that?
I would, I, yeah, like people, the way people receive names are always, it's always funny to me. Because my name is not like, it's not, it's colonized. It's a colonized name. It's Diogo Fernandes Tavares. And you wouldn't assume that I'm Portuguese name. And when you look at me, you would think I'm Portuguese. Because one of my favorite misconceptions of me, and like the funniest one to me, is when people ask me if I'm Dominican. I always think that's pretty funny. But like they don't assume that you're from like Europe or anything because of your name. And I always think that's okay. It's a little bit disrespectful, a little weird. But yeah, it's just weird that how people look at names and they think they know.
Yeah. Thank you for that. 100%. I think like just I'm hearing from both of you like this idea or like not idea, but just like this misconception that happens where it's just like people automatically like will view your name and then like have assumptions based on that about like where you're from or like not even attempt to like ask or unpack it, just thinking like, oh, like they'll offend you or something like that when it's really just like, no, like I actually am from somewhere that isn't maybe where you think I'm from because of what you have like sort of blinded yourself to see. So yeah, that's really interesting.
And that actually reminds me that like kind of connecting to what Dio has said, I think a lot of times when people hear like Black people have different names
Mhm.
that are not Americanized, like they kind of like get very confused because they forget like Africa exists.
Right.
So they don't really know where this name could come from or
Mm-hmm.
anything. Because I've had many times where like it, and it's happened more than once where somebody thought I was Indian
Hmm.
because of my name, which is like a very like racist like assumption, because like I have dark skin and I have a difficult name, so then people
Right.
are like, I guess then they just choose that I'm Indian, I guess.
Mhm.
And then it's just like, no, I'm from Ghana, it's country in Africa, blah, blah. And they're like, oh,
Right.
and it's just kind of interesting, like the way that immigrants are perceived. I don't think people think of Africans as immigrants.
Okay.
So then they kind of think that like you kind of have to be from anywhere else to be an immigrant, but not from Africa. So it's kind I feel like it's kind of part of that erasure
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah, for sure. Diogo, do you want to add anything to that? Or
Yeah, I think the idea of like people not believing you and making you seem like you don't know what you're talking about, especially when I expressed that I was born in Portugal, people look at me crazy. Like, you're born in Portugal, how's that possible? Colonization, how's that not possible? Like that, everything leads to that. And people don't really grasp the real world and how the real world consequences is now. I
Mhm.
honestly think it's just lack of information and education. And it makes us like vulnerable to like trauma and pain as being Black immigrants, because people don't really understand that the paths of people moving and how inaccurate people are.
Yeah, no, and what I'm hearing from both of you also is just like this idea of like erasure, like people like wouldn't even like think that like, oh, like because you're like just because you're Black, like you can also be an immigrant. Like it's not like you're just coming from like one singular place, like putting you guys like in this like singular box that isn't actually like real. And I'm like hearing like part of that is because of like education and like what people have been taught. And it just like that can be like painful and traumatic because it's like completely erasing like your background as a person. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Um, so that brings me to the next question, which is where is there solidarity with African Americans and Black immigrants, and where is there work to be done?
I say we both love sharing culture. That's one big thing. We enjoy being around each other and sharing commonality in like music and arts. And there's respects on both sides, but there's miscommunications too. Um, I know back then is like being African. I don't know, like when I was growing up, being African was like disappointing because you have this idea of how like American media teaches you like how Africans are living in hunts and all that, and that's disappointing. And then you realize that you have like your grandma living in Africa, so that's not really true.
Mhm.
I'm trying to figure out how to say because there's like a few points that I have in my mind. Like I would say that like, I feel like now there's been more solidarity building up, which is like really important from like, there's like lots of Africans and you see it like online as well. A lot of Africans being like, you have a home here, you know, saying the same. And it's been really great to see that solidarity. But then there have been like also times when like, it's not that like we're pitted against each other, but it's just like it's like kind of like white supremacy that is global, kind of like shaking things up as well. Because I remember talking to some of my friends
Mhm.
who are African immigrants as well about some TikTok trend that was happening.
Mhm.
I think in like 2020 or 2021, I can't remember when it was, but it was like a tasting fufu challenge.
Okay.
And fufu is like a West African food that you typically eat with soup or something else. It's not supposed to be eaten alone and you eat it with your hands or whatever. There was a lot of like great positive videos about it where like Black Americans would get fufu, taste it on TikTok and just be like rated or whatever. And there was a lot of like great things being like, oh, it's good. And even if they didn't like it, they'd be like, oh, it's not for me, but it's really interesting.
Mhm.
But then there were some that were like really disappointing, where like it would be, they would taste it, they wouldn't taste it with anything, even
Mhm.
though it's like it's supposed to be a food that's eaten with something because it's kind of bland by itself. And then like people like overreacting and like
Yeah.
spitting it out and calling it gross and disgusting and all that kind of stuff, as if it's like the worst thing they've ever put in their mouth,
Right.
which is disrespectful
Yeah.
to like any culture. So like even though like there's a lot of solidarity, I feel like, you know, um there's still like depictions of Africa and like people that aren't American, that like there's like inferiority.
Mhm.
So it's definitely like conversations that still need to be had between not even just Black Americans and Africans, but also people from the Caribbean as well and everything. Because like there's like a lot of solidarity, but then there's also rifts at times that like really need to be mended, I feel.
Yeah.
I say it's like a weird position Black Americans are in, because it could understand like points where African Americans are at, because we're we're underneath the same culture, we're underneath the same education, but it's difficult for them to understand where we're coming from.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like it's like, yeah, as Diego said, like we're here, like we see the type of education system that there is here. So
Right.
it's like it's not like wild to think, you know, like that there are some types of like stereotypes that like everyone, not just white people, but also Black people as well, have about Africa. Because like we see the textbooks, we see the education. The
Mhm.
only difference that we have is that we have family and we ourselves are from there. So we're able to not see, like we're able to see that and know that it's stupid because like we're directly tied. But then like anybody who isn't directly tied are just getting that stuff from like our education system
Mhm.
or media. So, but like, you know, Africans, they don't, as Diego said, don't understand that because like they don't have our education system.
Mhm.
So then it's kind of like, why do they think like that? But then on the other end, it's just like, that's why they think like that, but also don't try to not think about that, think like that because that's stereotypical and
Right.
it's not right. So it's like really difficult to like navigate it.
Yeah. And like what I'm hearing is like it's just like people kind of like automatically assume like from their textbook, like, oh, like this is like what that looks like. And like so then it's like almost like when you were to like tell someone like, oh, this is where I'm from, like you that immediately that image comes in their head,
Mhm.
which is just like a false and untrue image. Um, so yeah. Thank you both for sharing that. So our next question is, how does your experience as a Black immigrant differ from the ways in which immigration is portrayed through the media?
I don't, not until
Mhm.
the hurricane in Haiti, people didn't really see um, immigrants as Black people until they were in like going up to Texas through the border, and you know the horrific pictures of those border patrols using whips in them. People didn't really see like Black people as immigrants. But to be fair, all Africans on the new in the new world are immigrants, really.
Mhm.
And it's hard to understand, I feel, because we've been people have been here so long. What is the question again? I forgot.
No. You're like you're doing a great job. Like it's just like you're exactly you're literally answering the question exactly, which is just like wondering like how is immigration like in the media or like or even like just common knowledge and like how people think about it different for Black immigrants, like kind of like misconceptions within the media and like common knowledge about immigration and like Black immigration and like how yeah.
One thing would be when Donald Trump was president, when ICE was taking people away as a Cape Verde immigrant, you would worry, and people would get deported, and they would be Black, and they wouldn't say anything about it. It was a big issue, and nobody would say anything because there was just the image of just one type of immigrant, which is just multiple immigrants in the world, in America, not in the world, in America.
Yeah.
And I thought it was like not doing a service to everybody.
Mhm.
I also thought it was villainized in one group too.
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that. And that whole like erasure of like Black people being immigrants.
Right.
Like I don't really know like the answer to like, everything to be like why there's that erasure. But like when it comes to like media portrayals, like it's hard for there to like be misconceptions if there was no like conceptualization of
Hmm.
Black immigrants at all,
Right.
really. Even to this day, I don't really see any, like I can't think of any like specific media or anything that has Black immigrants in it, which is definitely interesting because like, of course, like when it comes to like Black immigrants, I feel like there's not as many as there are like different types of immigrants, but that just has to do with geography, of
Right.
course. Like people who are from countries that are closer to the US are going to go to the US.
Right.
I know a lot of Ghanaians, for example, if they go anywhere, they go to like England or
Okay.
something, an immigrant. They don't like, it's like US isn't usually the first option. And I know there's a lot of like different Africans that go to like France as well. That's a big one. So like I understand that there's like not as many, but there's a very significant amount, and I think more than people realize. And but also going back to Trump's presidency, I remember the Muslim ban that he did, that like very few people really talked about, but like there were quite a few countries in there that were African countries
Right.
that were part of that ban, but nobody like really rallied for them as much. Kind I guess because like one, people don't really see like no countries in Africa, so they don't really like think about that much. And also just because like people don't typically see um African immigrants, so then they kind of assume, or just like Black immigrants in general, so they don't really like talk about it. So yeah, I feel like there could definitely be more media representation and just like narrative shows, and also just like reporting on Black immigration. I don't know if that would happen anytime soon, but I feel like that's something really important, because I feel like just like I feel like that's not only going to bring awareness to Black immigration, but just kind of like diversify and like humanize Black people more in general.
Right.
Because if you don't see Black people as immigrants, for example, then it's just like you're taking out a whole group, and then you're boxing everybody in more in
Right.
this one collective, when that's just not the case at all.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And like, I guess like I'm just thinking about like media I consumed like during like Trump's presidency, for example, like what was in the news, like what images were being shown when they like talked about immigration. Like never was it a Black immigrant. It was always, talking about like the wall, like for Mexico. And like obviously, yes, because of geography, like Mexico is really close, but that idea that like there was also like plenty of people who were worried about their own deportation, who weren't coming from Mexico or weren't coming from like a Latin American country. Like they were maybe coming from like a country in Africa, and they were Black. And it's just like constantly this idea, I think what I'm hearing is like this erasure. It's like there isn't even a misconception, because there's nothing at all. And like just the fact that like there's no media about it, and like the fact that you can't like even think about like stories or narratives that are like very popular in media that like do tell these stories. So I also think I saw an article like the other day that like I think like 1 in 10 Black people in America are like immigrants. In like this new study, they found that, and that's like as you were saying, that's a huge like portion of people. And again, like it's just like that idea of like erasure, and it's like by not talking about them, acknowledging them, like making media, it's like it completely erases an entire like part of the Black community. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
feel like, oh sorry,
No.
and I feel like that kind of like brings in, being Afro Latino or Afro Latino or anything like that, because like when you think of, I said like the immigration, which is typically from Latin countries, you don't really again see like the Afro, like the people who are more of have like are from more of an African descent, or like darkest skin and whatever. And they're very commonly like excluded from a lot of things, even though they're also immigrating, they're also part of that community as well. I can't remember what movie it was that just came out, It was about like a place in New York where it has a lot of like Dominican
In the Heights.
yes, in the
Okay.
Heights. Yeah.
Yeah.
That has yeah, a lot of Dominican immigrants, and one of the biggest like issues that people had with it is that it was like there was like almost no or just no Afro Dominican people.
Right.
But there's like a lot of Afro Dominican people.
A lot.
And like the Dominican people that I know are all Afro Dominicans.
Right.
So it's like a whole like subsection of people that have darker skin that are Dominican as well, that are also immigrants, that are completely cut out, and it's just like a specific image of what like a Dominican immigrant or a Latin immigrant looks like, which is also a big issue, I feel.
Yeah.
I actually watched that film recently, very recently, and there actually are there's actually a lot of darker skin folks that would be presumptively Afro Latinx in there. The biggest challenge is that none of them are in lead roles, and all of the roles that they're in are like service industry roles, or cleaning the sidewalks, or washing the windows, or things like that. It actually, and then I was very surprised because I had heard that as well, and it ended up being incredibly colorful in the sense of portraying an array of colors. But again, like all of folks who had darker skin were were relegated to
Oh no. You're
No,
frozen. Oh, you're frozen. You
Yeah,
you
you're
froze for that
frozen.
last bit there.
and of course, as my connection is unstable. I'm hopefully you caught most of it.
Okay.
So do either of you have anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it brings it back to being Black in the world. We have all of us from the Caribbean to Africa to the States. We have to be united and can work as a community to make sure we're represented and taken care of when we take care of each other well, because it's really like us against the world, it seems like.
Oh, thank you so much for adding that. And that like really will bring me sort of like to how I want to like close this, which is just like for the people that like will watch this that like don't know much about like Black immigrants and um just like have been prone to like only knowing about like the erasure. So like not even understanding like how just the myriad of different backgrounds like within the Black community, like what's something you would want to like tell them, like or just like a takeaway you want them to have.
I would say one of them is just to research, and if you meet anyone, don't be afraid to ask questions about, who they are. Of course, make sure they're questions that are like, good,
Yeah.
but like, for example, there's so many, I don't even know how many tribes there are in all of Africa. It's thousands and thousands and thousands, so there's not a lot of information in Africa in general online, then alone like specific tribes. So if you know that someone's from a specific tribe, ask them about it, because I feel like a lot of Africans do enjoy talking about where they're from. There's a lot of sense of pride in your tribe and everything. So I feel like a lot would be like interested in talking about it, really get to know different tribes, research, learn about different countries,
Yeah.
different ethnic groups in those countries. Because once you do that, I feel like it will diversify what Africa looks like. And then along with the Caribbean as well, because the Caribbean is a bunch of different countries. Within those countries, there's a bunch of different types of ethnic groups. There's just so many of everything all over the world when it comes to Black people, and to like understand how diverse it is also going to help you individualize each person and realize that not every Black person is the same in any way, shape, or form. We all physically look different. Genetically, I'm pretty sure that people that come from that have genetic lineage from Africa, which includes like Caribbean, everyone who like have African genes. We have like the most diverse range of genes of everyone in the world. So like genetically very different. We have different hobbies, different likes, different music. And when you individualize different cultures, and then it'll help you individualize different people. And just one extra person understanding that not all Black people and not all Black immigrants are a monolith is like a big win and like a step forward in the right
Mhm.
direction.
Thank you. Wow, yeah, thank you so much. And Diogo?
I say be proud of where you're from, you know? If you're from Georgia or you're from Cameroon or you're from St. Lucius, just be proud of where you're from and be proud of being Black. And if those are the two things we need. And another thing I would say is the appetite for change.
Mhm.
I guess three things. Those are the three things we need for a better place for Black people in the world.
And to go off of appetite, try African foods.
Yeah.
Just go to a restaurant, you taste some really good food, you will not be disappointed at all. It will be a great experience for you and just help small Black businesses in general. So
Do you have any recommendations in Boston?
no. I don't know where you can get any food in Boston. I make it myself.
Period.
There's a Canadian restaurant in Dorchester.
Okay.
There is? Oh.
I think it's called CD Time. I don't know.
There's Suya Joint, which has West African food. It's in sort of near Nubian Square. And they also have a truck as well. I actually haven't been to the actual store in a while. Hopefully they're still out there doing good. But we should get food from them at some point. Their food is amazing. There's a number of Ethiopian places as well, which I know is East African, but that there's that too. But yes, West African, Suya Joint, amazing food.
Well,
I will look that up.
yeah, I'll have to find that. Well, yeah, thank you so much. That's all I have. Is there anything that either of you would like to add? It's okay if not, just putting that out there
What's our next topic?
for next week.
Yep.
Next week we are, oh yes, Boston. We're gonna be like talking to primarily like people of color who go to Emerson, who are actually from Boston, who have kind of like grown up in Boston, and then just like talking about like what it's like to then go to school here and have all these people from all around the world and the country then come and call Boston their home, and like what's that like. So yeah, thank you both so much. I really appreciated that.
Thank you. That was awesome.
It was great. And yeah, I hope you both have a great day and rest of the week. And hopefully you come to another Tough Topic Tuesday.
Thank you for having
Yeah.
us.
Thank you.